It is unfair to put them in boxes, to say, well, this one's the villain, this one's the evil one, this one's the good one.
For Christ's sake, she's posting pictures of Harry, talking about how cute he is.
Didn't she say hot?
She called him birthday boy, and I think she's called him hot in the past.
Not something you normally get with the royal family. Hello and welcome to this True Royalty original programme with me, Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen. On this show, we're discussing the comparison culture that fuels real-life tension between Catherine and Meghan and asking, where does it all come from? Joining me to unpack this issue are two social media influencers with enormous followings. In the studio, I have Lydia Olty, and live from America, I have Amanda Matter. Great to see you both on the show. Amanda, thank you very much for joining us at such far distance. Now let's start with you, Amanda. When did you first notice Meghan?
Meghan specifically, I have to say it was the year of her wedding. I would have watched with my mother, who I know for a fact was obsessed with the royals. She was a fan of Diana in her day, and we watched Will and Kate's wedding together. So it was definitely Meghan's wedding where she came onto my radar in a big way. I was in Windsor shortly after her wedding as well in that summer. And the energy there at the time was still so high. Like the bunting was still up from the celebrations. There were pictures of Meghan and Harry everywhere. So that was definitely the first time I was clued into this kind of phenomenon that was Meghan.
And was it important to you watching from America to feel a kind of a sense of, empathy, perhaps even a little bit of pride that there was this fairy tale princess that had married into the British royal family, not into the Genovian royal family, but the British royal family. Was there a real feeling of kind of Princess Diaries to it?
Oh, definitely. Because Americans, most of us don't have a firm understanding of really what the royal institution is, but we understand a prince. We understand a Cinderella story. And that's what Meghan's story seemed like to us at the time. So there was, absolutely that sense of pride.
So Lydia, there you are, this very, very contemporary concept of a social media sensation. But you also scrapbook, the good old-fashioned time-honoured way of doing it, collecting mementos, collecting photographs. What is it about the royal family that makes you want to take to your scrapbook?
I mean, I guess it's just like they are, like Amanda said, it's basically the fairy tale. It's basically like a fairy tale. And I think that when it comes down to collecting stuff, I like to collect photos from newspapers. I like to collect lots of replies I've got from the royal family and stuff like that. And I think that it's in the book, isn't it? You can always, you can take it around and show. You can show people on social media, fine. But I think that getting those photographs in actual print is just really exciting to do.
Well, particularly if you're getting personal replies, at least replies from the offices of the royal family. And you're very much a devoted Catherine fan, aren't you? The Princess of Wales is someone that you very much admire.
Yes, I've admired her. I admired her work. I admire how she carries herself in the royal family. And I think that she is one of those people that has come from sort of like a different background to, say, other royals in the past, where they've been from quite aristocratic. She's come from slightly different backgrounds. It's really interesting to see how she's, manoeuvred herself in the royal family.
Well, it is fascinating because there you have, it's a tale of two brothers, William and Harry, and they did not marry from the usual, from the time-honoured kind of gene pool of royal weddings. They didn't marry fellow royals. They didn't even marry fellow aristocrats. Kate comes from a very sort of straightforward middle-class family. Meghan, very much a middle-class, if you can apply that to America. But she went to a private school. Yeah, she's definitely super polished.
Yeah, she grew up. I mean, her education is one thing, but just her hobbies growing up, the love of the written word and the penmanship, I think of those as very quintessentially refined hobbies as well. So even though for both Meghan and Catherine, you have this middle class upbringing, they as people, I think they stand out among what we can call the middle class as people who are uniquely disposed to kind of have a different perspective on the royal world.
Well, and this is a fascinating thing you raise here, Amanda, because there they are now, they became representatives of this 2,000-year-old institution. They became part of something that actually at its heart works because it's quite timeless. But both of them have obviously wanted to, and in their own way, achieved a sense of moving the institution of the royal family forward, making it much more relevant, and obviously making it very attractive to you two.
Yeah, definitely. There's a sense right now, especially after the death of Queen Elizabeth, that the monarchy has a choice of how it wants to continue into the future. And Catherine and Meghan almost represent like the two sides to that coin. Meghan, somebody who wanted to use her voice and speak up about causes. Catherine, somebody who is very happy to go along with the status quo, but she's modernizing a lot of the personal side of the monarchy, the family life side in particular.
Yeah, and I think this is really quite fascinating, Lydia, because you've definitely got a sense of very different approaches between these two women. There's a lot that actually you can see, there can be comparisons made. They come from very different cultures, but actually they come from the same era, don't they? They come with all of the kind of the proclivities and the interests and the things that are very much part of their generation. But they do have very different approaches. And I think Amanda's absolutely right that there's a sort of a quieter way that Kate has of doing things. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that she definitely has gone down a different road than, say, traditionally royals in the past. You would expect royals to be, sort of stiff upper lip, and sort of like put their family and the duty before the family. Whereas she puts her three children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, before anything else that she does, and she spends holidays with them. So I think she's become sort of that royal that will do the duty, but will work it around her children, and she's not going to go back on that.
Well, there's quite a curious thing at work here, I think, Amanda, in that, it's almost as if Kate has brought kind of a big lump of middle classness into the royal family. So this idea of family holidays and this idea of kind of not standing on ceremony quite so much. And of course, I think one of the big shocks for a lot of people is that they don't have the staff. They don't have the acres and acres of footmen that you see in the movies. That actually they do have, in a weird kind of way, a relatively normal family life. And is that something that you think, is that a message that you get in America from them?
Yeah, I think to an extent, we still understand that there is support for the Prince and Princess of Wales. They have, the nanny that has been with the children since birth almost. But the distinction that I think British audiences are uniquely poised to understand is the difference between live-in staff and support staff. So I think if you dig deeper, there is still that degree of getting help with, because this is still an institution at the end of the day, right?
And they're also very busy people.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Catherine has brought in the sense of not wanting that to be 24/7. And I think of something like being able to spend Christmas with the Middleton family rather than the royal family. That is something that never would have happened in a previous generation.
And I think it's quite interesting because I think when we also look at Meghan, Lydia, it's like Meghan is bringing her own version into the way that she's bringing up her family. And I think this is very defined. It has that real sense of California to it, doesn't it? But it also has a real sense of celebrity sparkle to it.
Yeah, so whereas Catherine sort of fits into that, she does fit into the royal family. She is from that background where she understands, how aristocratic people should act. She's gone into that role, and she's a little bit nervous at the start, but she's gone into that role where she was supposed to, act a certain way, look a certain way, dress a certain way. I do think that she is a little bit different to Meghan in the sense that Meghan just didn't follow the traditions that much, in the sense that she wanted to bring her own sort of spark, as you like it. When she got married, she did the dresses her own way, whereas Catherine, she didn't particularly want to wear the off-the-shoulder sort of dress. So it was more of the fact that I think that when it comes down to Meghan, she wanted to do it her way, and if it wasn't her way, then it was basically the highway, basically.
Well, I mean, it's obviously latterly this seems to be how things have panned out a bit. But Amanda, I think one of the things that when you look back, say particularly at the wedding, the royal family were very supportive of the changes that Meghan wanted to make. There was a lot of things that had never happened in a royal wedding before. She had her own pastor brought in. There were so many details that really singled it out. And you get a sense, particularly from Prince Charles, King Charles now, when he was walking her down the aisle, he was very proud, wasn't he? You could tell there was an enormous amount of respect there.
Yeah, I think the sparkle, if you want to continue calling it that, was something the royal family thought was very attractive about Meghan. And Charles, I think, uniquely appreciated her having this very strong will, but that so quickly turned into a negative thing. I mean, you mentioned her bringing in the pastor. The most viral moment of the audience at that wedding was Zara making faces of incredulity that this American was, using this rhetoric that we are very used to here in America, this very fiery, impassioned speech pattern. But for the British, this was like a crack in the foundation. So I think there's, again, two edges to that sword, the sparkle and the shine of Meghan and what she represented for kind of this breath of fresh air in the monarchy through her wedding in particular. That was attractive, but it seemed like only to an extent. We weren't quite comfortable with all of the little changes that would come with that.
I think one of the obviously we're dealing with human beings, and one of the things about Zara that I think she's very much inherited from her mother, Princess Anne, and indeed grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh, is that she always has her own reaction to things, in the way that we all would. But Lydia, I mean, one of the things I find very interesting is to actually now historically contrast the introduction of these two women into this institution, because it was very, very different. Meghan arrives, and it's a quite quick courtship. It's very romantic. It's very, eye-catching. The papers are alight with it. Everyone's talking about it. But she sort of also hits the deck running more or less instantaneously. Catherine is very different. That was a very long courtship. They met at university, and in fact, they split up, and then they got back together again. And then even after the wedding, William was still working for the air ambulance. And Catherine and William had a quite extended period of time where they could really live quite quietly. It was like she was very much eased into it in a way that Meghan, I think, certainly wasn't.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that Catherine was eased into it more. I mean, she went on a number of different, I would say, training role engagements. She went with the Queen. She went with I think she went with Prince William on a number of occasions just to ease her in. And at the time, Prince William wasn't a full-time working royal. He was working part-time for the air ambulance. So he was, when George was born especially, he was spending a lot of his time, going between different places, going on the air ambulance, but also being home for Prince George. So I think that, yes, she definitely had time to learn the ways of the royal family behind closed doors and learn how she can, sort of like, represent herself.
Well, getting the balance, isn't it? And I think this is the crucial thing. And I think this is something that it's fascinating talking to you two about, is that this understanding of the fact that both these women wanted to make a change because it had to be relevant to them.
Yeah.
And we wanted them to make that change as well. We didn't want them to be unhappy. We didn't want them to feel that they were doing the wrong thing. But one of the things I find quite interesting, though, about Meghan, Amanda, is the fact that, yes, she was sort of very much thrown into it. But then we're dealing with a person who's older. We're dealing with a person who's extremely successful. We're dealing with a person who's very, very used to being in the spotlight as an actress. To me, there's a sense that probably Meghan would have said to the firm, if you want to call it, or the palace, or whomever, no, I want to get on with this. That actually I feel I'm capable of this. I can do this. Let's get cracking.
It's very possible. She is someone who I think is used to blazing her own path. I think she may have also been a little naive or uninformed, if she was getting all of her information from Harry, on exactly what the institution could do to women marrying in. Because Harry's experience would come from his mother, Diana, and then Kate, two very different eras. And like you were saying, the on-ramp for Kate was so much longer. She had so much more grace. And of course, yes, the machine did what it's going to do. The press was absolutely horrible to Kate on many occasions in her early career. But I think Meghan, learning through the filter of Harry, maybe naively felt things are different now. This is 2018, right? We are not going to do that trial by fire anymore. We've learned our lessons. So she may have had an expectation as an American coming into an institution that a lot of Americans, we know what the British royal family is, but we don't know the inner workings like Kate would have growing up in that culture. But also, yes, as a professional working woman who is used to being praised for using her voice, she had this humanitarian work under her belt as well as her acting career. I think it would have been an immense culture shock, even if she was intending to hit the ground running. You can't really downplay the fact that she would have been speaking a different language to the monarchy.
Although I think there were more moments, and there were a lot of messages that were coming out, which were that they were very supportive of that different voice. They were very supportive of the idea of this being something very, very new and very different. And particularly in the context of the fact that I think for King Charles now, the idea of being able to specifically use Harry and Meghan as a bridge into the Commonwealth. This was an amazing opportunity for the royal family. That it's almost like William and Kate could kind of focus on back here, but suddenly you've got Harry and Meghan that could become the international outreach for the institution.
Yeah, and that's, again, it's very tough because absolutely the monarchy wants to be a global brand in 2025. I mean, forget the Commonwealth. They make trips to America for a reason, right? They are sort of courting that international level of attention and understanding. But it's so tricky once you get into the discussions of Commonwealth and the monarchy's presence, you pull on that thread just a little bit and you suddenly get into conversations the monarchy doesn't want to have: colonialism, slavery, racial issues. And Meghan found herself in a very narrow position of, we want you to be refreshing, we want you to use your voice, but not like that, not in this way. And that's a tricky tightrope to watch.
Yeah. Particularly, I think, Lydia, there's a sense with Meghan that she's very empowered, that she knows who she is. She wants to get it done, but she kind of wants to get it done. With Kate, there's a much more pervading feeling of, okay, I'm going to see how this goes. I know where I want to get with it, but I am prepared to just do it a little bit more gently, a little bit more subtly. There's a marvelous, one of the things that the people always used to say about the late Queen was that she really understood the concept of soft power, the concept of walking into a room and saying nothing, doing nothing, just being there as the Queen. And I think a lot of people are beginning to notice this about Catherine, that this is exactly what she does. She's not a very talkative person. She's not a communicator in the way that Meghan is. But do you get that sense from her that she has an ability to be able to be quite patient with things?
Yes, I think that with regards to Catherine and how she presents herself, I think that she sort of will get on quietly with her work. She's been, recently, in recent months, people have been, scrutinising her for everything. And I think that despite all this, she's come out of it and gone, well, I don't care, and she's just gone on with how it's, how she's worked in years gone by. And I think that contrasts a bit to how Meghan she wants to be this outspoken, Duchess, and she really wanted to speak in a way where she was allowed to freely speak about these things that the royal family doesn't particularly like to get into because I think that a lot of people don't particularly know how to differentiate between times, maybe. It just depends on how you've been educated. So I think that as well as Catherine's been able to walk into a room and go, well, I can actually just do this. I think that going back to what Amanda said, she's been able to just go into a room and speak about stuff, whereas I think that Meghan, she wanted to get going straight away because that she's already had that. She was already famous before she started. She'd already been on the television. So,
well, also, I don't want to simplify this at all, but it feels very much as if this is quite a part of the American concept of culture, that you do things quickly, you do things emphatically. Definitely certainly the old days, the grumpy old days, there was always that sense with the British that it would take forever, but it would eventually get there. But let's go to your specific wheelhouses, ladies, and let's start talking about social media, because I think this is one of the most fascinating things that you've got this institute, time immemorial. This is an institution that was kind of going before writing. This is something that goes back so far, and yet has been very quick to keep up with the times. The late Queen herself, she was very quick onto all the technological advances. But of course now, it's all about social media, as was going to say queens. So let's talk about the way that these two women use social media, because it has a very specific difference, doesn't it, Amanda?
Absolutely. I think one of the things, just to connect back to what Lydia was just saying about the difference in presence on the royal work circuit, for Meghan, it's all about impact. And even though that's something we've seen Will and Kate start to adopt in their model of engagements, it trickles over into social media in a really visible way. For Meghan, her social media presence, obviously, this is quite new as of this year. She kind of got back on Instagram. She's very personal on there. She's very direct. She's posting, for Christ's sake, she's posting pictures of Harry talking about how cute he is. Like, that's unprecedented for the royals. You know, you don't necessarily expect to see. She called him birthday boy, and I think she's called him hot in the past. Absolutely.
Yeah. Not something you normally get with the royal family. But then we've never had a Harry like Harry before. But yes, so you have a very strong sense of, certainly on social media, she is going to be authentic Meghan. She's going to be absolutely 100% Meghan.
Definitely. And she has said this in her own words, even as her social media is an arm of her branding at this point, her Netflix series and her merchandise. She's talked about that's her account. That's her personal account. It's not branding. It's not marketing. And I think we can parse the words there a little bit. I think it still is marketing, whether you intend it to be a personal account or not. But you get the sense she's running that account herself. She's posting things herself. Whereas with the royal accounts, there are several. They are all kind of under different households' silos. Will and Kate's in particular, it's a little bit more modern and up to the times than other households, but it's still very, very hemmed in by protocol.
Do you agree with that, Lydia? Do you feel that Catherine's a bit more, a bit more boring? A bit more old-fashioned?
I didn't say boring.
I know, I'm putting words into your mouth, but there we are.
I would slightly disagree, because I think that in recent times we've seen the Prince and Princess of Wales be quite open. I mean, especially if you look back to September last year when the Princess of Wales released that, she was free from cancer, she finished that chemotherapy. I think that, it was a full, yes, it was a film. Yes, it was a professional film, but it was one of those films where she was really open, she was authentic, she showed just her and her children. I think it's still authentic with the fact that they just show themselves as themselves, that if there's a video about something, it will be about them getting muddy and getting their hands dirty.
Well, this was absolutely the most unprecedented thing. The huge, impact that Catherine's cancer diagnosis had on the world. I mean, the speculation up to that point that we had not seen her, we knew she was unwell, and the fact that she then released that very raw, very, pared back video explaining what had been going on. And then, as you say, created this film, obviously with professionals. But you do feel as if you were in their life with them, don't you? Right in the midst of a really incredibly difficult, very, very worrying time. But you felt an immense amount of empathy.
Yeah, I think they've been definitely over the past 5 or 4 years or something. They've been very open with the public as much as they can be, And I think that they've shown behind the scenes quite a lot, and not always, you can see something as a photo and they're smiling and stuff, but behind the scenes you can see sort of like the closeness of the family. And I think that as well as Amanda said with Meghan, it is a brand, it is marketing. Yes, it is marketing, but I think that when it comes down to the Prince and Princess of Wales, it's more than just promoting their brand or their housing. It's about promoting, togetherness and family, and so they can connect with that younger generation as well.
Because I think it's very interesting, Amanda, that the for all of the impromptu, easygoing, natural honesty and authenticity of Meghan's videos, you don't see the children's faces, do you? I mean, there is that reserve, and often, and I mean, I think the other thing as well, there's often this big question about whether they're even at home. That the series was not even shot at their house. That it's almost like you've got to ask, how honest is that honesty?
Well, I mean, honesty and authenticity. I mean, with the royals, respectfully, everything posted on Will and Kate's social media account, it still goes through that filter of staff members writing it, staff members posting it. So I think the authenticity question when it comes to Harry and Meghan is a tricky one, because would we expect to know the whereabouts of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis at all times? No, probably not, because of their own security and boundaries that William and Catherine have chosen to draw around their family and their private life. Meghan and Harry have done the same thing, and I actually think Will and Kate have taken some cues from them in recent years. They no longer give photos to the media of the children before they post them themselves. That is something that shifted after Harry and Meghan set the precedent. We want to be the ones to own and post our children's likenesses, not, we don't want to hand it to these people who are writing terrible stories about us.
It's fascinating. And I think in many ways, this is what we want all of them to be doing, is learning from other people's lessons. But so let's start talking now about the fact that these two women seem to be being pitted against each other. When, Amanda, did you think that really started?
Oof, it's so tough to pinpoint an exact moment because there are so many instances where it could have taken off. I mean, I think it was day one when Meghan and Harry stepped in front of the press to show off the engagement ring. We have to have a villain and a hero, or at least a dichotomy that the press can kind of tug on one way or the other, right? To set up this narrative that's more compelling than just saying, we're so happy for the new prince and princess. There always has to be some angle, I think, for the media that is a little bit subversive, a little bit more sexy, right? So I think right away the temptation would have been there to pit them against each other just because it's low-hanging fruit. It's a tale as old as time. You can look back at Diana and Sarah Ferguson to see how it played out in a previous generation. And I mean, then it was off to the races, right?
Sure. Although, I mean, I think, because I remember at the time being very struck by the amount of, there was this very energized campaign to start what everybody wanted to call the Fab Four. That because, obviously Harry and William had been incredibly strong as a two. Along came Kate, and she obviously seemed to fit in very well and got on with both brothers. And there was that point, well, okay, well, now we've got Meghan, so surely we've got four of them. This is absolutely perfect. And I think, I could imagine in King Charles's head, marvelous. As I say, we've got, one couple to do here, we've got one couple to do abroad. So there was a sort of a benevolence in the very, very early days. But it's definitely that didn't really ever seem to sort of thoroughly bed in, did it, Lydia?
No, I don't think it did. I think that people are always going to compare them. I mean, people to this day are still comparing, Diana to Meghan or Diana to the Princess of Wales, as she's known as now. And I think that when it comes down to the media, there always has to be this comparing. People compare the children. The media compare the children. What was Prince Harry like as a child? Oh, Louis like that now. And I think that it is unfair to put them in boxes. To say, well, this one's the villain, this one's the evil one, this one's the good one. I don't think any of that should have been a thing when it first started, and I think that. Well,
I think this is one of the things, and I think also this is one of the sort of slightly nasty surprises that Meghan had when she came over here, which is that we live in a country where the press is tough. The press is very tough on fame, on celebrity, on institution. We have a long tradition of basically auditing the reputations of the people that we celebrate, the people that we raise on a pedestal. And I think obviously, it's tough, but William and Harry have grown up with that. They know all about that. Kate was never exposed to that, but she would have seen that. But I think particularly coming from a Californian context where, there is a much stronger emphasis on private life and private space and privacy generally, it must have been a bit of a jolt for Meghan.
Absolutely. And it goes back again to, I think, not growing up in that culture. She's talked about she had no idea what she was in for with the British tabloids and the paparazzi and how they move in the UK. And Kate, by contrast, I mean, she grew up in the era of phone hacking. She and William were under a lot of scrutiny during their dating days. So the press, they're like the third player in this rivalry. They're the ones kind of orchestrating the tug of war in favorability. And the thing that I always come back to is Meghan. I don't think she expected special treatment, but I think she expected to be dealt with more fairly than she was in the press in those early days. There were immediately emotional overtones and racialized overtones to her coverage that she would not have felt were fair, and an American audience definitely picked up on right away.
To be fair, though, I mean, I remember so the very early days with Meghan, there was almost instantly a lot of very unfavourable press about Kate. that Meghan had come over and she was very eye-catching and very sparkly, and she was smiley and she was going out there and she was, talking to people in a way that Kate was always a bit reserved, and people were, they were talking about her having a broom stuck up her back, and she was treated quite harshly as well. So it's not simply one-sided, is it, Lydia?
No, I think that when it comes down to Meghan, she, as Amanda said, she was, she thought that they were going to be a little bit more kinder. The press in this country is sort of like very cutthroat. You have to be. Everything that they do is scrutinised, unfortunately, and it happens with all celebrities and royalty and stuff like that. But I think that when it came down to Catherine, even to this day, it's everything she does is scrutinised to the point where she's, called, she was called Waity Katie at the start, and then now the Prince and Princess of Wales are usually known as, the Prince and Princess are boring or lazy and stuff like that. So I think that when it comes down to, duty and stuff, I think that they tend to ignore that. But I think that Meghan sort of thought that she could be the hero, be the person that could just come in and be like, well, I'm going to do this my way. Nobody's going to, sort of say something rude to me. And yeah, she was bullied by the press. The press were really rude about her with her race.
And they were forced to apologise. I mean,
they were.
Even they understand that they'd gone too far.
They shouldn't have said anything about her race.
And in fact, with race, there was nothing but positives about the fact that, for the first time ever, the British royal family had a biracial senior member, and that is then reflecting a huge proportion of not only Britons but also the Commonwealth and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It was a very positive thing. I think there are plenty of people, Amanda, that really still very much miss the fact that she's not still on the balcony. That particularly now with King Charles's very, very pared down monarchy, there's not many left. If someone's got a cold, it's difficult to find someone to cover. And actually, Harry and Meghan would be a tremendous boon in that context.
I mean, the monarchy sort of, no offense, dug that hole for themselves when the qualification for standing on the balcony became you have to be a full-time working royal. And I think that's something that came after the fact, after Harry and Meghan stepped back, specifically to keep them away from the spotlight. So I don't quite agree with you there.
No, but I think the thing is, certainly as far as King Charles was concerned, he wanted to make sure that everyone on the balcony was there. Ultimately, of course, they're all being paid by the British taxpayer. So, actually we are employing them. We want to see that the money that we give them, they are doing their job. And Meghan and Harry decided to no longer do that job. So, they stopped being part of that. But actually, just in terms of, in terms of positive influence, and her story was so powerful as well. And, the fact, all that she'd gone through, all that she'd made. And as you say, these wonderful, almost timeless flourishes in her interests were fascinating. I think there are a lot of people that would still love to see her as part of this. Do you think that's something that's ever going to happen?
I hesitate for a couple of different reasons to say yes, just because I don't think it's quite universal that everyone would be excited to see her back. There is a significant portion of the British population who, for better or worse, had an issue with her background, her race, her Americanness, her class. All of these things got baked into questions about her identity that not everyone was excited about. And I hate to say that, I hate to bring it up, but it was there from the start. Even though there was a lot of hope, a lot of positive coverage, it was mixed in with this skeptical, I think is the most polite word you can use, tone in some instances. But yeah, then for Meghan herself, I don't know if she would necessarily want to associate with the monarchies, the way that they run things and the way that they are so baked in with the media these days. I think she and Harry are supporters of the monarchy's cause. I think they consider themselves royalists still, but the way that unfolded for them is not necessarily something I think she would be interested in returning to.
I mean, although I think it is important to stress that, the negative reaction is very much a press thing. We have no real record of there being any kind of negativity within the royal family at all. And I think it's important that we kind of make that sort of separation. But let's go back to, because one of the things that was quite interesting was, if we look at this as a confrontational relationship, if we pit these two women together, let's talk about the battles that they kind of chose to fight. And I think Lydia, obviously one of the big things that both of them had in their armoury was fashion, and a very different approach to the clothes and how they expressed themselves in a very, very public context.
I think that with the Princess of Wales, or as she was known as back then, the Duchess of Cambridge, she sort of wore clothing that was, I mean, she's gone out to many engagements just wearing, off the high street clothing. She sort of wants to be that relatable princess, as she's known as now. And I think that when it comes down to engagements with her children, you can see that they're wearing brands that you and I would wear, we would buy off the shelf.
It'd be a little small for me, but yes, I know what
yes,
you mean.
Yes, yes. But I think that with regards to Meghan, she wore those clothing that was sort of maybe a little bit out of our price range, but I think she still wore the clothing that maybe some of us would buy, and if it was like on the shelf. But I think that when it comes down to Catherine, she wants to be that sort of relatable royal, where somebody can go, oh, I know that, I wear that, I can sort of relate to that. And I think that when it comes down to fashion, the British fashion industry is like £1 trillion industry. People sort of just look at the taxpayers of the money and go, well, and that's probably why. Also, going back to what you were talking about with Amanda, I think that with the British monarchy, people look at it and go, well, there's only 9 royals or something, and go, well, that's why, because of the controversy between how much they cost the British taxpayer.
Absolutely, and we don't want ones that we're not getting value for money out of,
Yes,
basically.
yes.
But Amanda, I think it is very interesting because, I mean, it was very clear right from the outset that Meghan had a very different sense of style. And, I mean, latterly, there's been a lot of talk, and a lot of talk from Meghan herself, even quite recently, about the constraints that she felt that she was put under as being a working royal, and that she has said that she felt that there were things that she felt she had to wear and things that she felt she wasn't allowed to wear. Some of that's been latterly questioned, but certainly she looked very different. She always looks very different from the Princess of Wales or Catherine, as we always said. But then all of a sudden, they don't. All of a sudden, there's like a little crossover, isn't there? There's a little moment where the fashion streams meet, and Catherine looks a little bit Meghan, and Meghan looks a little bit Catherine.
Again, with Meghan, you can't downplay the fact that she was an adult working woman entering this institution. She already had a strong sense of self, and for many women, that includes a strong sense of fashion. So her style was very rooted in up-to-the-minute silhouettes, cuts of the clothing, right? She was wearing a lot of neutrals, and she has explained that was so she didn't clash with senior members of the royal family. She must have gotten some training along the way to tell her, you don't wear the same color as anyone more senior than you, and most importantly, the Queen. And so she says she's interpreted that as the easiest way to get through that was to wear neutrals, right? So that starts to come into her wardrobe. She loves to wear black as well. She looks good in it, and that's not a color traditionally associated with the royals, who reserve it for mourning. So those elements do start to creep into Catherine's wardrobe, and I think that's something to do with, yes, Catherine getting older herself, stepping into an elevated role within the family, but also looking at the way that Meghan's fashion was received and looking at what it said about her. Her style still projected professional, serious working woman. She's informed, she's contemporary, and you mentioned the coverage of Catherine sort of playing up her dullness, the fact that she had been around for a while and she's not as shiny and sparkly anymore. And that's not me saying it, that was what the press was saying, right? So I think you're presented with this sister-in-law who is so fashionable. She's breaking some of the rules in, I think, a safe way, and of course you're going to take a little bit of inspiration from that.
Yeah, because I think, and particularly now, I mean, latterly, because of course we've seen so little of Catherine, I think this is one of the big things as well, is that when we do see her, it's a very special moment for all of us. And it's almost as if now she's hit a very classic groove, which if she's doing an informal walkabout and she's got sort of like, mum clothes, sort of school gate mum clothes on, and she looks great in it. But it's these sort of fashion icon moments when she turns up at a premiere or whatever. And so, she's an extraordinarily beautiful woman to dress when she really wants to sort of, pull out the full beam. And she's developed this quite kind of almost a little bit gothic, quite, Alexander McQueen, the veils and the hats and the, little bit Addams Family, I think, Amanda.
Just
Do you
a little
think will we see a walk on in Wednesday maybe in the next couple of seasons?
She definitely does play up the drama that we expect from royal fashion in a very classic way. And I do love moments from Meghan's time in the royal family where she was able to pick up on that a little bit as well. So I like thinking that there was an exchange of ideas. Unfortunately, I think that some of picking up inspiration from sisters-in-law, whoever we're talking about, might have also been fueled by the way they were being pitted against each other. And sometimes the comparison was very unfavorable, particularly, again, unfortunately, to Kate, who had kind of been pigeonholed into this role of wife and mother. She's raising the future generation, and that's the most important thing about her. I still hear people saying when she's kind of taking time out of royal engagements, well, she's busy, she's a mom, that's her most important job, which I don't think is true of any woman if she has passions outside of raising a family. Good for her. But the fashion became a way for her to kind of steamroll that narrative about herself and to put forth that, no, I do have things I'm passionate about and I take them very seriously. I'm wearing a pantsuit. Can't you tell?
So, I mean, finally, let's now drill down into, what you two do. What is the future for Meghan and Catherine in terms of their social media? Lydia, where do you think Catherine is going to be going with her social media over the next few years? How is it going to change?
I personally think they're going to go more down the short videos, sort of side of social media. They've done the photos before. I think that they now realise that they can sort of interest the generation, our generation, with, a little bit of a interactive video, showing behind the scenes, showing them handshaking people and, maybe getting their children involved sometimes in doing a video saying, well, this is what my children did at the summer holiday. They're not going to release that, but, it's sort of like an example of what it's kind of like their social media for the future. And I think that, like with their children's birthdays this year, was behind the scenes photo of their photo shoots. And I think that they're going to go down that route where it's a video of, their children or video of, say what they're doing, because I think that that's where we've got to now. The photos are just old-fashioned now. They're going down the film.
It's too static. And Amanda, do you think with Meghan, who's now very much embracing Instagram, and it's obviously something that she's going to be featuring, heroing over the next few years, where is that going to go? Is it going to get more and more lifestyle? Is it going to get more and more branded?
It's so hard to know because I would think the branding would be top of mind, but she has treated it like a personal account all year. So what I would love to see is a built out social media space for not just Meghan, but Harry and their foundation, Archewell. I think right now she's focused on landing in a space that is her own enterprise. So that's what I think we'll continue to see from her. But yes, those behind the scene moments, I think for both Buckingham Palace and Montecito are what the public wants to see. They want the curtain to be pulled back a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see her giving us those little glimpses into her home and family life. Whether or not there are any winks and nods to like the royal watchers who are lurking on her pages, we'll have to wait and see. But that's always a factor as well.
So you both agree we're going to see a lot more Harry with a hangover and Kate in curlers?
Probably, yeah.
Something to look forward to. Thank you very much. A very, very unique take on how these two women are moving their careers forward and their personalities and their identities and ultimately their brands by espousing, the unfolding potential of contemporary technology. So Amanda, thank you so much for joining us from America. That's all the time we've got for this show. Thank you to my guests Amanda Matta and Lydia Oldie, and to you for tuning in. Do keep the conversation going on our socials. Just search True Royalty TV. Thank you. See you next time.